It's my great honor tonight to introduce to you my friend, my brother, and my colleague. Our Exemplary Service Award recipient is a longtime volunteer for Virginia Delta, who has also served at Virginia Pi and on the national level. Dr. Franklin Bud Robeson is a 1968 graduate of our Ohio Theta chapter at the University of Cincinnati. After earning an MBA and doctorate in business at Indiana University, Dr. Robeson joined the business school faculty at William & Mary in 1978. In 1999, Brother Robeson got involved as a faculty fellow for the Virginia Delta chapter at William & Mary. He also served as AVC treasurer for nearby Virginia Pi at Christopher Newport from 2003 to 2009. Since 2010, he served Virginia Delta as our AVC president. In the early 90s, Brother Robeson served on SIGEP's Technology Task Force. He was also on the National Leadership Committee from 2001 to 2010, and the Higher Education and Program Evaluation Task Forces from 2010 to 2011. Brother Robeson's commitment to continuous improvement has helped both chapters reach new levels of excellence. He helped Virginia Pi achieve their first Buchanan Cup. He led Virginia Delta in successfully applying for residential learning community accreditation. He guided the chapter skillfully through reestablishment in 2010. He recruited volunteers and ensured the undergraduates would have sufficient support. He has been a force behind the chapter's rechartering and sustained success. An undergraduate leader recently described Brother Robeson as, quote, the consummate SIGEP, an exemplar of virtue, diligence, and brotherly love. Bud's dedication to SIGEP is unending and therefore inspiring to all those who have the opportunity to work with him. At Virginia Delta, we recognize how fortunate we are to have Bud. Brothers and friends, please join me in welcoming our Exemplary Service Award recipient, Dr. Bud Robeson.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that? So you want to hold that for me?
I sure can.
You guys don't have to stand here while I talk. This is going to be, when you ask an academic to come to the front, you're going to get either 50 minutes or 75. I promise it won't be that long. So there it is, Joslyn Avenue. The address is actually 321. That's the SIGEP house at the University of Cincinnati. And that was my home for 4.5 years. I wasn't a slow learner. I was in a co-op program. Now you say, why just the 4.5 years? Because the last half year, I was married. So we thought it was wise to find someplace else. But why SIG-EP? When I first thought about looking at fraternities at UC, and the recruitment was during the summer, I'm a legacy. My brother Jim was a SIG-EP. So I knew I didn't want to be a SIG-EP. But during the recruitment process, it became clear to me that this really was the best match. That these were the men I shared values with, and that I wanted to have as friends and eventually colleagues. But I suspect, like almost all of you in this room, when we joined SIG-EP, we really didn't care about the national fraternity. We were focused on the local. And in fact, since I'm rather senior, at that point, we really didn't have much interaction with the national fraternity. I think the only time that we would hear from them was when some things went the way that they probably should not have. I didn't really get involved in meeting other SIG-EPs until we traveled to some other campuses, or in my case, when I attended my first conclave as an undergrad. But I think that the opportunities for leadership, collaboration, and you know one thing, when you go to a chapter meeting, you learn a lot about collaboration, extensive decision-making, and how to get along. But there was another benefit to being a SIG-EP at UC. You see, the house was located right next door to the Chios. And right across the street, about 75 feet away, were the Theta Phi's. And next to the Theta Phi's were the Kappas. And if you had a good arm and could throw a ball well, you could throw the ball over the Theta Phi house and hit the Alpha Chi's. So I was fortunate enough to have a fraternity brother who introduced me through his girlfriend to a wonderful young lady at across the street in Theta Phi house. Well, things seemed to work out, and she's here with me tonight. And then the three people with phones up taking pictures right now, those are my children. And the good news about them and Adele and myself is we're all Greeks. And we saw the value of what comes through fraternal organizations. But we do have to be kind to my son because he strayed when he was at Virginia Tech and didn't see fit to join with us. But he's been a good Sigma Chi, and there aren't too many. And now I'm going to share with you a picture that summarizes my undergraduate experience. This is at our wedding, and it was the tradition to throw the garter to all of the guys who were there to see who was going to be the best one, the next one to succumb. Okay? It was a great day. It was a great event. They were my wonderful brothers. But let me tell you about the men in this picture. One of them became the Dean of Design, Art, and Architecture at a major university. Another became the partner in charge of personnel at the world's largest public accounting firm. Another became the vice president of development at the University of Cincinnati and oversaw a program to raise $1 billion. Another ran a successful accounting firm on his own. Another fellow was a managing partner at a prominent law firm in Cincinnati. And one that you can't see behind me ended up being a CFO of an international pharmaceutical company. Now, that just didn't happen because we were SIG-Eps, but SIG-Ep was a part of what we became. Because it was the brotherhood that was important, and our friendship thrives. And I think one of the things that's really so important is when we get together again, like at homecoming or other events, it's not like we've been apart for 20 years. It's like when we were undergrads. As much as I love this picture, it does show the social realities for most Greek organizations when I was an undergraduate. There are no minorities, and in fact, there were real limits on religious backgrounds. Now, fortunately, those things are starting to change, and hopefully the pictures at all of your weddings will look quite a bit different. But the brotherhood and the friendship and the kinds of accomplishments that will happen will be the same. Walter Isaacson has written a very interesting book called The Innovators. And he spends a lot of time talking about Doug Engelbart. He was very much into human-computer interaction. His research at SRI started to lead to the mouse, the graphical user interface. But he also was very concerned about what he termed, and he stole the term from biology, called coevolution, that computing and human interaction are inextricably tied together. Well, I think that's very true of where we are today. Our fraternities are very much influenced by the campus and social realities in which we live. It's also true that we have an impact on that community as well. And it's going to be important in the future. The one thing I know is that the fraternity experience will evolve, and we must, as volunteers in the future, ensure that SIG-Ep's leadership on our campuses and as a national fraternity continues. Now, I'm going to spend just a minute talking about volunteering. Mine was kind of an interesting journey. Following undergraduate school, I got into graduate school right away. That ended up being quite a bit different than the undergraduate experience. And the emphasis on grad school and then a growing family seemed to consume a lot of time. And after that was completed, then starting an academic career and a growing family, most of my volunteer time was limited to civic organizations and, of course, the kinds of activities that all of your kids are involved in. So how did I get re-engaged with SIG-Ep? Well, that really happened again through my legacy connection with Jim. You see, our families every summer would go to the Outer Banks, and we'd spend a lot of time together. And usually Jim and I, after everybody else was gone to bed, we might find some time to sit down and talk about things. Jim might find single malt, and I would go in a different direction. But we had some great conversations, and of course Jim at that time was very active in the national fraternity, and he was talking about what he saw as the needs for the growth in the fraternity and also many of the positive things that were happening. So I got involved, and some of those have been outlined, and I thought that that was really very terrific. And then I had an opportunity on my campus at William & Mary to get engaged with the men at Virginia Delta. But like we encounter at many campuses, there were some challenges. I did have an opportunity after we had to have a hiatus on our chapter on our campus to begin working with a new chapter in SEC at Virginia Delta. And that was very exciting in terms of the chartering and helping them move in the direction of a buck cup. So I think that in terms of my volunteer activities, again, this is what it's all about. The chartering for the men at Virginia Pi and the rechartering of Virginia Delta. And those are important things and a wonderful legacy. There's a recent article that's just been come out in the Atlantic, and it was on the it was posted on February the 8th on their website. It's written by Alexandra Robbins, and I highly recommend it to you. She's also written a book called Fraternity. She spent a year with Greek organizations in terms of writing the book. I haven't read the book, but I have read this article, and I think it's a very balanced perspective on Greek life. And she has a really fascinating quote from a fraternity chapter president from the West Coast. It is not a SIGEP chapter because he's talking to the new pledges. And I am going to edit some of his words. But here's what he said to the new pledges. We've worked really hard to build a reputation as a house of nice guys. If you endanger that reputation, you'll immediately be kicked to the curb. That's not the kind of people we want. We're here to learn how to grow up a little bit. And with that comes learning how to be a nice human being, how to look out for others, for guests, for girls, and how to properly treat women. If you're consistently nice and respectful, you're going to build a good reputation, and that's going to help a lot in life. And she points out that that's not consistent with the dominant narrative that we hear about fraternities. But she maintains that through her research, this is much more consistent with the reality of the fraternity world today. So volunteers have an opportunity to bring the mentoring and leadership to ensure that the perspective offered by this fraternity president continues. Now, this just isn't about my volunteering, so I asked my ABC colleagues and some others about why they volunteer. And here's what they had to say. I don't think you'll be surprised. The consistent response of all of this is that they had a great experience as an undergrad SIGEP, and they have a sense of needing to give back. And that's an important part of why we volunteer. And also the opportunities to meet and collaborate with SIGEPs throughout their career and throughout the world. So that's our fraternity tagline. This fraternity will be different. But the coevolution realities that Engelbart introduced dictate this, that this fraternity must be different. Okay? The reason I volunteer is because this fraternity is different. Thanks.